Okay. All right, so we are back with another podcast episode. So this is a new format for a podcast. We're doing essentially a live podcast, meaning there's going to be guests that are allowed to be on this podcast. We're just going to have people join up if they want to. But overall, we're going to be having one single talking point per episode. It's not all going to be DC focused. I do have a lot of topics in mind when it comes to different things. But today we are going to be talking about the actual failing point in the DCEU. Now, I know there's a lot of fingers pointed at different things in what caused the failure of the DCEU. But before we get any guests up, we're going to settle this once and for all and look at the actual numbers. The actual numbers and the statistics of what actually went wrong with the DCEU. So, the first thing that we're going to look at is the Man of Steel performance, because that's where it all started. The DCEU started with Man of Steel. So we're going to look at the actual performance of the Man of Steel. Not what people like to say, but the actual performance of it. So, pretty simple. The Man of Steel box office number was $670 million. That's the recorded gross, the highest gross of the movie for when it was released. So, the total gross was $670.1 million. The budget for the movie was reportedly $225 million. So we can kind of calculate a little bit on how much Superman actually made. So if we go into our calculator and we do 670, we'll just do 670 minus 225, we would get 445 million. So 45 million. Some of that not completely going towards profits, because you also have to consider salaries. You have to consider how much the theaters are taking, how much XYZ is making. So essentially around that $400 million. Now, the Man of Steel Rotten Tomatoes scores we can actually look at as well. So Man of Steel Rotten Tomatoes was a 75% for the audience and a 57% for the critics. Now, let's just compare it for sake of it. Let's just compare it to the Superman movie, 1978. The 1978 Superman movie had a score of 93% for the critics and 86% for the audience. If we actually look at Superman Returns, because we know that people like to point out at that movie, Superman Returns, the Rotten Tomato score was 74% for the critics and 60% for the audience. So, in comparison, Man of Steel kind of fits right in the middle. Not the most hated, not the best performing Superman movie of all time. In box office numbers, it's a little bit hard to really calculate because you have to factor in inflation for the older movies. But either way, Man of Steel, I would say, is not the failing point. You can definitely say that Man of Steel is not the failing point of the DCU, because regardless of the fan reception, there were people that were still hopeful, like me, for the DCEU going forward, and there were still people that were maybe on the fence, but was still kind of enjoying it, right? They were interested to see where the direction went. Then we have Batman vs. Superman come out, right? The Batman vs. Superman Rotten Tomato score is a 63% audience and a 23% critic. And then the Batman vs. Superman box office number is $874.36 million. Now, most of that was made internationally, which is common, but it's important to note that. The actual domestic box office was 330 million, compared to the Man of Steel box office, which I will find out real quick. Domestic was 291.05 million. So overall, right? Overall, Batman vs Superman did perform better than Man of Steel. Now, if we actually look at the Man of Steel Rotten Tomatoes, we can kind of remind ourselves that the Man of Steel Rotten Tomatoes was a 75% for the audience score. And then if we actually look at the Batman vs Superman Rotten Tomatoes, we can see that it did in fact go down to a 63%. So 75% compared to the 63% for the audience score. I'm going to actually just take away the critic score and just look at the audience, because the audience is what really matters. The critics don't matter as much. Not as much, right? But when you go down to the performance of the movie, the audience does say that the movie was, in their opinion, overall worse than Man of Steel. So we can kind of see that Man of Steel had a few different ideas that the audience in general didn't like, especially in comparison to the Man of Steel. And I think part of that is likely due to the ending of the movie, in which Superman obviously KOs. And I do think that played a big factor into the idea of where the movies kind of stood with everybody. Now, let's look at the Suicide Squad, S-Squad, box office numbers. So, the original box office for the original Suicide Squad was overall $749 million. So less than Batman vs Superman, although not, but still more than Superman. And if we actually look at the S-Squad Rotten Tomatoes, then we will see that 2016 had a 58% for the audience. So we went from Superman, or Man of Steel, which had 75%. Then we went to BVS, which had like 60% or something like that. And then we have the S-Squad, which has 58%. So one by one, the movies come out and the scores get lower. And I think that's really important to kind of look at, because that's where we kind of had WB kind of panicking. Because they see that overall, right, they look at each one of these movies. So in order, Man of Steel comes out, then BVS, and then S-Squad. Each one of those movies slowly performs worse and worse than the other. Now, what's interesting is then we then have Wonder Woman 2017 come out. Now, Wonder Woman 2017 did release before Justice League. But overall, okay, it performed, obviously it did perform well. It overall made $822 million. And in comparison to BVS, if we compare it to BVS, right? I'm having to keep going back. BVS made $874 million, but domestically only made $330 million, which is important to note because Wonder Woman domestically made $412 million, meaning domestically Wonder Woman actually performed better than BVS. And this is something that pissed off a certain person that was running that regime back then, because because Wonder Woman performed domestically better than BVS, better than Batman and Superman. And actually, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Woman was pulled out of theaters as it was still doing well. So it wasn't even necessarily something that failed. It was something that was still doing well, even in the weeks of the box office stuff. And then it in general left theaters still doing well. So it could have actually made more money, but they pulled it out of theaters before it could. Now, Rotten Tomatoes. Let's take a look. Rotten Tomatoes, Wonder Woman gets a 93 from the hang on. Oh my god. Shut up. Okay. Hang on one second. Okay, so Wonder Woman gets a 93% and an 83% for audience, which is overall better than any of the other movies that were released. So in order, we have Man of Steel, BVS, then we have the S Squad, and then we have Wonder Woman come out. Wonder Woman overall performs better than all of them domestically. Nationally, not as well, which is where we had the slight shortage in the box office, but overall performed better and was perceived better by the audience. And I think it's this moment where WB takes a look at this and is like, okay, well, we need the tonal shift is essentially where they came down to it. Then we had, of course, Justice League come out. And Justice League is something where it is definitely a case to be studied. Justice League at this time should not have been released. It was not ready to be released, and they were rushing to get it out. Justice League only made $661 million. Now, that is a lot of money. But overall, in comparison, it performed atrociously worse than most of the other movies that were released. Is because even if we look at the S Squad, the S Squad still made $749 million, and Man of Steel still made $670 million, meaning Man of Steel made more money than Justice League, and is telling because you can actually look at the domestic numbers. And the domestic numbers are only $229 million. Now, in comparison, when you look at the Man of Steel domestic, you see $291 million. So even domestically, Man of Steel still performed better than Justice League. So obviously we can see Justice League is kind of the first thing that caused the universe to fail. Because if your team up movie performs overall worse than your solo movies, you have a problem. You have a problem because also for the Rotten Tomato scores, Justice League had 67% for the audience score, 39% for the critics, but again, we're not really looking at the critics score. 67% for the audience, and in comparison to that, Suicide Squad, again, we go back to it, 58%. Meaning your team-up movie only did 10% better than one of your worst movies that was released. Which is not a good look to have for your team-up movie. Especially Justice League, which should have been much better. Now, one could point the blame at the lack of Superman. One could point out the blame of the overall direction that Justice League kind of went in and the overall marketing. And I think the truth is, one of the biggest reasons it probably did not do well is because of the fact that they did not use Superman in their marketing campaign. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're going to do a Justice League movie, you need the Trinity to be there. And I think that the reason why Justice League didn't do well is because Superman was not used in the marketing campaign. The only part of Superman that was actually in the marketing campaign was the logo. And unfortunately, I don't think that Man of Steel sold people on Superman the way that it should have. And I think that, like, even if the Justice League was a bad movie, it should still have performed better than it did. Because box office wise, it should not have been a problem. You could see the reflection in the scores, like the Rotten Tomato scores. But overall, Batman vs Superman and the S Squad and everything else before that, right, pretty much performed okay, at least. And Justice League is one of the worst performing movies in the DCEU. And I think that's really telling of where the status of the DCEU was at that point. Because people essentially lost faith in the DC universe before anything else kind of happened. I'm not letting guests up quite yet, but I do want to get through kind of looking through the phases before I let any guests up. But I will at some point. Okay. Then Aquaman comes out. And Aquaman is interesting because this is the first point. So, okay. It's important to know that the only movies that Zack Snyder actually was responsible for was Man of Steel and BVS. Those were the only two movies that Zack Snyder was actually involved in. When it comes to the S Squad, Wonder Woman, and Justice League, all of those movies fell under a different person. And then Aquaman was a new person, which is where the Walter Hamada kind of begins, right? The Walter Hamada was in charge of Aquaman. So that's an important aspect to note. But what's also important to note is after the failure, the objective failure of Justice League, what's important to note is that Aquaman, obviously, we all know this, made $1.15 billion. So, even if you're going to blame Justice League for the failure of the DCEU, the movie right after it performed phenomenally. Meaning, you can't really blame Justice League for the failure of the DCEU when the next movie that comes out makes $1 billion in the box office, right? Because that just doesn't make sense. So, in reality, this new kind of direction that the DCEU was having could have actually worked because Aquaman proved that it could still have potential to make money. And what's interesting is if you look at the Aquaman Rotten Tomatoes as well, right? You look at the Aquaman Rotten Tomatoes, it did not have the certification behind it. There's only 66% for the critics and 72% for the audience. Which is interesting because your most profitable movie was overall seen as worse than Wonder Woman. And I'm not entirely sure exactly why, because I think there's a couple of factors into it. But overall, right, your biggest performing movie was still not good enough, essentially, for your audience. And it's interesting because with Aquaman, it is the most profitable DC movie. It just is. But it's not the best received movie. The best received movie so far that we're looking at is still Wonder Woman. And the question is, why is that? It's so interesting. Right now, okay, I am going to guess in a moment. I'm going through their phases, so I want to make sure we get through everything before I let guests up. Because I don't want to sidetrack that. So interestingly, right, your most profitable movie is Aquaman. But your still overall best perceived movie so far is Wonder Woman. Which tells you a lot about where fans really wanted the DCEU to fall. But it didn't. So then we look at the next movie that comes out after Aquaman. And let's see, hang on. So the next movie to come after Aquaman is Shazam. So Shazam makes the box office. So the box office for Shazam was 366 million. Jeez. Hang on. No, okay. I forgot it performed that badly. So the box office for Shazam was $367 million. Which obviously is not good. And as we can kind of see, so far, the worst performing movie in the DCEU. So we went from Aquaman, which was the best performing movie in the DCEU, to Shazam, one of the worst performing movies in the DCEU. And mind you, it's 2019, so it is still before the pandemic. So you can't blame the pandemic on Shazam, because Shazam released in 2019 before the pandemic happened. But interestingly, let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes, see if maybe it was perceived better. Shazam actually had a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score from the critics and an 82% from the audience, which is interesting. Now, to be fair, Shazam has a lot less ratings than the other movies. But overall, the people who did see Shazam liked it, which is interesting because you have one of the worst performing movies in the DCU still perceived better than the best performing movies in the DCU. And I think that kind of shows you the projects that were working, the projects that people were liking, were not making as much money. And they were slowly losing that traction more and more. And you look at then Birds of Prey. Now, to be clear, all of these movies, pretty much, that I'm about to list, came out during the pandemic. And the most important thing to note is that during the pandemic, WB had a strategy where they did the movies and the theater release, like the streaming and theater release, on the same day. Now, this was honestly probably one of the worst decisions that the Warner Bros. Could have made. Because this set the precedent that you can just stay at home instead of go to the movie theaters. So one of these decisions was probably bad for all the movies going forward. Because they set a precedent that the movies released from 2020 to 2021 would all be released in streaming day one. And essentially, it dissuaded anyone from actually going to the movie theater. That being said, let's look at the Birds of Prey. The Birds of Prey box office numbers was $201.8 million, so worse than Shazam. But, notably, during the pandemic, during this whole change. And let's take a look at the Birds of Prey Rotten Tomatoes just to see for comparison's sake. Birds of Prey received a 79 and 78, so right in the middle. So still worse than Shazam, which is interesting because it's hard. It is still important to note that there are less ratings in comparison. But overall, Birds of Prey kind of sits in the middle for the audience. The people who saw it had a hit or miss experience, and some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. Then we look at Wonder Woman 1984. In 1984 box office, again, you have to note that it did happen during the pandemic. The Wonder Woman box office number was $122.8 million. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong number. $169 million. Obviously, worst movie so far that has performed. Now, to be fair, this was really in the middle of the pandemic. This was really in the middle where people weren't going to the theaters. And the overall score is 58 and 73. So 58 critic score and 73 audience score. Worse than Birds of Prey. So we can kind of see that it wasn't really Justice League that failed the DCEU. It was the fact that you had movie after movie after movie after Aquaman losing more and more and more money. Because if you look at it, Aquaman made $1 billion, did really well. Then you had fail after fail after fail after fail. You would think that Justice League was the final downfall, and I would say that it probably did help it push it in that direction. But we can literally see that Justice League came out, performed bad, and then Aquaman came out and performed phenomenally better. So you can't really blame Justice League when you saw that the movie right after it performed the best of the DCEU. And I think that in general, what really happened is that WB tried to do this 180 with the universe. They tried to do a thing where, okay, people really liked Aquaman, so let's try to meet that Aquaman numbers. Like, let's try to get there. And I think it failed. One, because of the pandemic, because people just weren't going to the movie theaters. But two, there was no reason at that point for people to go to the movie theaters to watch DC films. Because again, they had the strategy of let's release these movies at the same time we put on streaming. So there was no incentive to go out to see these movies in theaters when you could just stay at home, watch the movie, and then also you're being told simultaneously by the government that you shouldn't be going out to see this movie. Zack Snyder, I can't really compare how it performed overall. There's mixed reports on how much the watch time actually was for Snyder's Justice League. Yes, it's like a 5-hour film, but it's also like some people watched it, some people didn't watch the entire thing, some people cut it off. It's one of those things that we're just not going to be able to know how well Snyder's Justice League actually did. Then we had, just to finish it out, we had The Suicide Squad by James Gunn. Now, it is important to note that there were less restrictions coming out for The Suicide Squad, but there was still a lot of reluctance to go see movies in theaters because of the fact that you're still dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic. So, but either way, Suicide Squad 2021 made $168.7 million, which not great, but if you compare it to the previous pandemic movie that came out with 1984, you see that Wonder Woman made 169 and Suicide Squad made 168. So overall, worse than Wonder Woman. Now, I don't think that was a factor in... I think, again, you kind of dealt with that situation where people were still not going to the movie theaters. And I think you can still point out the fact that, yes, Batman Part 1 did well, but it's the fact that it's Batman that got that to the theaters. And when it comes to the Suicide Squad, I don't think it had enough pull to bring people to the movie theaters when they're also being told that they still shouldn't really go out. Like, you still shouldn't really go to the movie theaters because the whole thing is going around. But the Suicide Squad Rotten Tomatoes score, if you compare it to everything else, 90% and 82%. So you still see that James Gunn's Suicide Squad was perceived better by the audience that saw it. Now, you could argue that there were less people who saw the movie overall, so it's an unfair comparison to make, which is fair, because there is overall less people reviewing it, because there were less people who saw the movie, because also you were dealing with the pandemic. But then you have Black Adam come out. Black Adam is the next movie in the phase of the DCEU. And the Black Adam box office is interesting because it actually did make $393 million. So it means that post-pandemic, Black Adam performed better than the other movies that were released. Looking at the Black Adam Rotten Tomatoes, though, we'll see that the score is 39 and 87. So, still not amazing, and also not a lot of reviews. So you had a lot of people watching Black Adam, but not a lot of people reviewing it. And it is interesting. And I think Black Adam, I don't think performed the best that they were hoping it would. Because the other important thing to note is that the budget for Black Adam was reported to be $260 million. Meaning that it still did not make money. It did not break even, despite the fact that it did perform better. And that was the thing that was the problem, right? The DCEU movies, even when they did well, were not really profiting the way that they should be. And that comes down to finances. But overall, you also look at Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which came after Black Adam, and you see that it only made 130. Oh, sorry. No, yeah, that is actually the right number to look at. It only made $134 million, which in comparison to Black Adam, obviously financially worse. Fear of the Gods, but the Rotten Tomatoes, though, let's just take a look. Fear of the Gods was 85%. So, still worse than the S Squad and Black Adam. And then you then had, of course, The Flash, but at this point we're kind of at the end of the DCU anyways. But sure, let's look at The Flash and how well that did. $271 million. So, still worse overall. The only thing that really brought people to the theater was Michael Keaton, which was a big reason. I mean, there was a big reason for that. You did see that Michael Keaton was able to actually pull people into the theater. But then the Rotten Tomatoes score, let's take a look at it. 81% audience score and 63% critic score, which is interesting because you compare that. Fear of the Gods was perceived better than The Flash, and obviously the most of the movies before The Flash were perceived overall better than The Flash. But The Flash still had a pretty decent Rotten Tomato score, but it still didn't really make money. It didn't make money, actually, at all. And then we had the final movie that came out, which was Aquaman. I know some people are going to say, what about Blue Beetle? Blue Beetle doesn't really count because Blue Beetle isn't even in the DCEU. It's a separate film on its own. So that doesn't really count. And then, so the Lost Kingdom had a 79% Rotten Tomato score for the audience. And then the actual box office numbers was $439.38 million. Now, obviously worse than the first movie, but interestingly enough, higher than the other DCEU movies post-pandemic. Which is interesting because you kind of look at it and the budget for the movie is honestly where it kind of failed. Because if you look at the budget was $215 million. Only made $439 million in the box office, meaning it failed to make money. So, again, you have the situation where even when a movie does well, in comparison to everything else, it still doesn't make money. And that's the real problem. The real problem of the DCEU is not necessarily the actual films. Yes, that has a factor into it. But the actual problem of the DCEU was the fact that there was no budget in mind. They were spending money as if they were Jeff Bezos, and they were losing money every single time they released a film. Even when the movies did well, they were still losing money. So now that we have the full picture, right, now you guys can actually request up so that we can kind of talk about where everything went wrong in your eyes. So if you're going to request up, the idea is to kind of discuss where you think the DCEU definitively went wrong. I do think Justice League was a bad note in the earlier phase of the DCEU, but I also think that in general, you can't necessarily blame Justice League for the failure of it, because you had movies like Aquaman that still performed better in the box office. So clearly it wasn't necessarily, like, it could have been saved, it just wasn't saved. And I think that's the thing. If they had played it smart, they could have had releases that were profitable. Maybe not make the most money, but profitable. Now the question really kind of remains, would Batgirl, had it been released instead of The Flash, would Batgirl have made more money than The Flash? And I think that's tricky, because The Flash required a lot of money into it. It had a high budget going into it. I believe, from what I've seen, the Batgirl movie would have actually had a lower budget than The Flash. Would it have performed as well? Maybe, maybe not. We don't really know. I think it actually probably would have performed better because you do have that Bat Family name. And, no, it wasn't going to be a Max original. It was going to be a theater release. That's been confirmed. It was a tax write-off, but it was going to be in theaters. It would have been in theaters like the same way that Blue Beetle was. Because Blue Beetle was actually supposed to be a Max original movie, and then they released it in theaters. So essentially Blue Beetle kind of took the Batgirl spot in streaming movies being released into theaters. But even Batgirl was not going to be a streaming movie. It was going to be released into theaters. It had it actually come out. Because if it was a streaming thing, then they would have actually just put it on Max. Because the thing is, the reason why it got a tax write-off is because they couldn't put it into theaters, or at least they didn't want to put it into theaters. Because putting things into theaters costs more money than just dropping it on a streaming platform. The failing point was the tone, to be honest, and this is coming from someone who liked the Snyderverse. So here's my opinion, going through my overall opinion going through the DCEU. When I left Man of Steel, I was kind of split in the middle. I was hopeful that maybe the DC universe could be better, but I was also very hesitant going forward. Now, I'm someone who doesn't really see the bad in movies, but it was disappointing in my eyes because I felt like Superman could have been better. Then BVS happens, and I don't love it. I'm on, the fence still. When I saw Wonder Woman, I had a lot of hope because Wonder Woman was actually good. With Suicide Squad, I don't know if I hated Suicide Squad the same way that most people did. I think it was just kind of in the middle for me, probably. But Justice League was a painful one because there were parts of Justice League that I really did enjoy, and there was most of the movie that I didn't. And the thing about it is, watching Justice League, you can tell that it was made by multiple people. Because you can tell that there are parts that never got resolved, or parts that just never got addressed ever again. Or you could see that there were ideas kind of set and then never really resolved in the movie. And even if it was a good story, it was still a point in which there were just aspects that just did not work well at all. Like, at all. And it was one of those things where, like, I left Justice League knowing that that movie could have been a lot better, but it wasn't. And I definitely think that that was a tone shift that was felt by everyone, because you also had kind of that idea of this is like supposed to be the DC Avengers, but it didn't do well, and it didn't do well at all. Like, at all. Like, you can't have a team up movie be one of the worst movies in your franchise, because then you don't have a franchise at all. Why did Aquaman make as much money as it did? You can actually look, but it was really the international audience that brought it to $1 billion. Because even domestically, yes, Aquaman performed well, but it still kind of didn't work with a domestic audience. Like, it made 430. Oh, sorry, no, that's the wrong number. It only, okay, I found it. Domestically, it only made $335 million. The rest of that money came from other territories. $816 million came internationally for Aquaman. So, essentially, you still had Aquaman kind of fail domestically, but it did better globally overall, which is interesting, right? Because domestically, we can still tell that the domestic audience was not vibing with it. Domestic audience didn't really watch Aquaman. It was the other countries that watched Aquaman. And now I think that's also telling as to where the DCU can fall, because if James Gunn does the strategy that I think that he's gonna do, then he's gonna appeal more to the international and the children's audience than the average comic book user. And I think overall, that's better, because we don't have to be told to go see a movie. We will just go see the movie anyways. We're not the ones they have to we are not the people that they have to convince to go see the movies. Like, overall, most people are still going to watch the movies when they come out, right? We are going to see them. Whether you hate it or not, we will see them. It's everybody else that they have to convince to go see the movie. And that's something that doesn't always work out, because you do have to keep the general audience in mind and what the audience overall would want to see. Where I think James Gunn is doing well is that he's looking for directors that are well known globally. You look at Luca Guadagnino, you look at a lot of these directors that he's hiring. A lot of these directors are involved in, like, foreign films, or, like, have a foreign market. And it's a good thing that that's a case, because foreign countries are very loyal to foreign directors. Like, they are extremely loyal to foreign directors, to the point where they won't even care who the character is. They will go see that movie anyways. Like, you put Luca Guadagnino on that film, if that actually ends up going out, it may actually end up being one of the best performing movies in the DCU. Because you just need a director of that caliber to sell you characters you don't care about. That's what made Guardians of the Galaxy do so well. Everybody knew who James Gunn was. They didn't know who the heck the Guardians of the Galaxy was. Like, they didn't know. Nobody knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. You had the director sell you on that concept. And that's where directors have a lot of power in how well these DCU movies do. So here's what we've kind of laid out, because for those of you who missed it, in the beginning we were kind of going through each and every single movie. We went through each and every single movie and how well they did in the box office and not. From the gate, we can see that Man of Steel was not received well by the audience. Like, overall, it was not received well. Like, not as well as it should have. And then we got to BVS, which did perform better than Man of Steel, but again ran into that issue where it was overall worse in comparison for the audience. So you have Man of Steel, which is already kind of in the middle. You have BVS, which is definitively worse than Man of Steel. Like, you look at the numbers and everything, it is worse. You look at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is the outlier in this whole situation. Because Wonder Woman, even though it did technically perform less than BVS, was perceived better than Suicide Squad, BVS, and Man of Steel. It also made more domestically than the others, which is important because domestic numbers tell you a lot about how a franchise is doing. Because if the American audience, because comic books are American overall, if the American audience isn't watching the movie, then you have a problem. Because you can sell the international audience on pretty much anything. And overall, right, the movie for Aquaman did well in the box office, but performed worse domestically. Aquaman performed worse domestically than Wonder Woman 2017. Which tells you a lot, because even though the global box office was better, Wonder Woman was still perceived better than any other DCEU movie. And I think that's the thing, right? When people look at these movies, all they look at is the global box office, which can tell you some things, but the more important number, especially when it comes to WB, is actually the domestic box office number. Because that tells them whether or not they are doing well with the American audience and whether they can do better overall. And they can have great international box office performances. But the thing is, when it comes to like foreign audiences, they're not as loyal to the brands as the Americans are. It just is a thing. Like, brand loyalty is less common in the foreign countries because overall people just want to watch a good film. If you're overseas, you don't really care what number it is in the series, as long as it's just good. Like, Jurassic World does really well globally. Like, you have certain things that do really well, like, internationally. But if you can't land the domestic audience for a comic book movie franchise, then you're not going to perform consistently well. And you're going to have to rely on the international box office every single time you release a movie. And while that can be okay, it overall won't be good. And if you can't get the domestic numbers to come in, then you're not going to have a successful franchise. And it's one of those things where if you let's do an experiment, okay? Let's look at the Dark Knight box office because we know what it did. Domestically, The Dark Knight made $534 million. Compare that to Aquaman, which did technically make more. You compare that to Aquaman's domestic number, The Dark Knight performed better, over $200 million better domestically than Aquaman did. Let that sink in. The Dark Knight performed over $200 million better domestically than Aquaman did domestically. Even though Aquaman did perform $1.15 billion, domestically, it did not perform well in comparison. Now let's take another experiment, because let's look at Joker. Let's see what Joker did, because I'm curious. I just don't know. I haven't actually looked at the specific numbers. So you run into that same situation where, yes, Joker made $1 billion, but domestically, it only made $335 million. So you run into this pattern where the only time your movie does well is when you have the international audience there. And that tells you a lot, because overall, the US audience still was not being sold on these movies. Even The Joker, which performed well, did not capture the domestic audience. Yeah, we can start letting guests up now. Hey.
Hello?
Hey.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it was definitely the casting choice was really good. I just think it was the way the movies were made, like the weird order of them, where half of them weren't even introduced before Justice League. Like Cyborg himself was introduced in that movie, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Like the
definitely
reason was stuff
agree.
like the stuff like
Because, right,
Mhm.
Justice League in general felt like you were being dumped all of the information at the start of the film.
Yeah, like stuff
Yeah.
like the Flash. Stuff like the Flash and Cyborg, they just appeared.
And
And
I think
then
one of those problems was the fact that, number one, they eliminated Superman, so obviously you couldn't have him be an anchor to the team. So
true.
they tried to make Batman be that anchor. And that's kind of what I've kind of said, is that they were trying to make a Batman-centered cinematic universe. And the problem with that is Batman is popular, but if you don't have the Trinity in your Justice League movie, it's not really a Justice League movie.
Yeah, speaking of the Trinity,
Yes, I understand they
speaking of
didn't
the
necessarily
Trinity,
want.
I honestly think
I feel like they should have spoiled the fact that Superman was going to come back, because I understand why marketing wise they didn't want to do that, but I do think it actually contributed to the fact of why it failed, because people didn't know that Superman was going to be in the movie.
speaking of someone like the Trinity, like Wonder Woman, I feel like Gal Gadot, as of recent, everyone's realizing how like awful she actually was
They
as Wonder Woman.
overplayed that freaking
Like I think
electric
the
guitar.
costume was pretty good.
I love the electric
Hello,
guitar
no.
in BVS. I love the electric guitar in BVS. I never want to hear it again. I will.
I think Wonder Woman was pretty good. I watched Wonder Woman, but
Well, here's the thing.
it was all right.
Here's the thing that we've realized. Wonder Woman is mostly action shots. Like, Gal
Mhm.
doesn't actually speak for most of the movie. It's either Chris Pine, Etta Candy, Ares, or somebody else that is speaking over her. And she is just standing there looking pretty most of the time. That's
It's
why
true.
it did well. Because she did not have a requirement to actually act. She just had to model.
I also have a bit of a bias though towards Gal Gadot, considering my her views towards recent stuff.
Mm.
But also, I just don't think she's a very good actor. I don't know how she got that star
Yeah.
of fame, but obviously paid for it. But she's
Yeah.
pretty. She's
She
not
is.
really the best Wonder Woman. She just
I
isn't.
mean, that's Linda Carter.
Linda Carter. I never watched the old movies. I couldn't tell anything
Oh,
about
they're
like
not movies. There's
Christopher
a
Reeve
show. You
Superman.
should
But
watch
oh, I
the Wonder
showed my
Woman
bad.
1970 show. It's really good.
She showed up in Shazam, didn't she?
Yeah, as
Like
a
the
camera.
second one, Linda Carter.
Yeah, yeah. But that was technically a different character that she was playing. It's a
It's
nod.
true.
It's funny because anytime Lynn Carter is in a project, there's some sort of hint towards Wonder Woman, even if it's like not.
I really liked, as well as that, Shazam. I feel like Shazam was just a random character to add. Like, I know he was like pretty popular with Young Justice and all, but I feel like just the movie was good. I really liked the first movie, but I never watched the second movie yet.
No,
But I
you
just
know the
really think
DCEU is dead. We're in the
it
DCEU
is.
now. Like I don't think you
I
realize that,
I
right?
cannot wait for Superman. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I cannot wait for Superman though. Honestly, it's
um,
gonna be so good.
Oh, from day one, I did not like Ezra as Barry. That was not nope. Even before there was that controversy with them, still wasn't sold on him on them being Barry. Because like for
I think the
me,
costume was too
it just
like,
well, first of all, why the frick is he wearing like armor? Like he
yeah, the costume's too like
it looks
paneled. It's
heavy.
the problem with a lot of live action movies did that. Like we've all acknowledged that. Like the
I think the
superhero
best
costume in comics.
designed suit for the DCU was actually Batman because
I love Batman's design.
even
I
even Cyborg wasn't that designed that well. Like I don't love the Cyborg design that they gave him because like I
a bit
feel like
too like
it was too many like parts. I think it needed to be like
too many
smoother.
lines and
It needed to be
mhm.
smoother. Like it
So
felt
like
like there
Iron
were
Man
like
almost.
20,000 different limbs on his body.
If he was more of like an Iron Man style, like
You
built
know what it is?
more
I feel like
panels,
it looks more like a skeleton. If you look at it like
It
the
does. Like,
design, it looks like you're
he's
looking at a skeleton.
more like a Terminator looking style almost.
Yeah, they're trying to do that T whatever design.
T-1000.
Yeah, it's just like you see like essentially what looks like supposed to be is like his rib cage and everything, and
Hmm.
I don't think it works. I
As
also
well as
think that
that,
they
like
needed
with
to keep a
Cyborg
little
doing that.
bit more parts of him human because the cyborg in the
True.
comics, his arms are still human. It's one of his
I
arms
didn't like
is
at the start I didn't like the more human looking cyborg with the chest exposed, but I'm starting to like it a lot more as of recent
well
compared
because here's
to
the thing,
overly robotic
right?
ones.
He's not 100% a cyborg. He is it's more so
Yeah,
a prosthetic where like the parts that got blown
it's like
up have to be
organic
replaced.
metal.
Yeah. And I think I understand why people like the mostly machine cyborg, but I feel like you miss the story element of the fact that it was literally this accident that happened that required him to have these surgeries. Like he's not like a machine. He has the
And that
mother box technology, but he's not like a machine. He's still a guy who likes football.
the humanness of him, I feel like it just makes him look too robotic and less human because he's literally the only
Mm-hmm.
thing there is like three-quarters of his face.
Like, I feel like if they go back to Cyborg for the DCU, they should lean more into that human design. Whereas, like, it's more so kind of
The
that
comic
armor in the
style.
middle, but his, like, arms, I think also practically it will look better, anyways. Because you will see those, like, muscles on whoever ends up
True,
playing
they
Cyborg. And then you will be able to kind of see that, those,
I
like,
think a
think
fully
of it more like prosthetics than an actual machine. Like that's what it should look like.
I'm thinking like a costume instead of a CGI body, like where he's literally just got like panels
Yeah,
and
because if they're
like
doing
metal
that, I mean,
parts
the
on him
engineer
instead
is
of just
obviously
complete
gonna be
CGI.
obviously like for the engineer, it's all gonna be like CGI. Like we've seen that they haven't put the effects on engineer yet because that's gonna be all edited in post. I think Cyborg, if they do
Wait, remind
Cyborg,
me
it should be more
the
so
engineer
where
is.
what they could do is have him sort of wear like specific things that will allow them to insert the effects afterwards. So like certain whether it's like mocap or whatever. But
Maybe like a armored up sort of thing.
yeah, like I mean, not a green screen, but like more so like something where they can add the effects in afterwards, like a smooth plate or something where they can then go up back and like edit on top of it. Um, told me not to watch. The thing about BVS that I think actually like ruined everything was the fact that they brought in Doomsday. Like, if it was just like a crossover World's Finest, they just did like, I don't know, Luthor and the Joker or something like that, I don't think it would have nearly been as bad as it was. The fact that they brought in Doomsday and you know that they have to do the death of Superman, that's what ruined it. Because then you don't have Superman. And people like to say, oh, Batman can carry a franchise, Batman can do this. Yeah, but only to a degree. You do need Superman to be there because Superman is just as popular as Batman. Especially in the Justice League context.
If not more popular.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because the thing about it is that, yes, domestically, Batman is more popular. Internationally, Superman is much more popular.
For me,
like you could go to...
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say you could go anywhere and... Oh?
Oh, no, just have to do the freaking inactivity thing.
First of all, hi to both Ruby and Ben. Thank you for having me up.
Yep.
The thing that ruined BVS for me was... of course, I got a call right then. The thing that ruined BVS for me was Jesse Eisenberg. I thought he was just a terrible loser.
Yeah.
And
Luthor, that's like too comedic. It's just weird.
He was more of a Riddler than
yes,
Luthor
with the hair as well.
Yeah, the thing about the DCEU that the things that they did well, they did really well. The things that they did bad that were really bad.
Yeah, I would agree that because like overall, like the movies that were actually performing well, I feel like we can consider like good, like.
Yeah.
Even Aquaman, I know people are like mixed on Aquaman. I still think that Aquaman is like pretty good overall.
I thought it was too.
I liked the first one. I liked it.
And obviously I like Wonder Woman 2017, although like I said, it's mainly because it's mostly action shots and Gal Gadot has like 2 speaking lines.
I think one of the most egregious things they did, and this is me even not hating it, but the way that they made Superman such a dark character.
Mm-hmm.
And he had no hope.
The movie was so grey.
Everyone is like, oh, well, you know, he would have still killed, you know, Zod. Like, that's not really the problem. Like, I mean, yes, it is sort of a problem when you have the first movie that you introduce Superman, you introduce the fact that he does KO. But the overall problem is not necessarily him offing Zod. It's him... like just never showing you that he does actually save people. Like even like the bus.
A lot of destruction in that Zod fighting scene.
Because here's the thing, you could have set up where, you know, the bus scene, you know, he saves these people like regardless, and then you have another scene where he like the building falls and he's like trying to save as many people as possible, and then you get to that Zod scene and now he's like trying to not kill him, but he realizes that that's his only option to stop Zod.
They also
I feel like that, had they done that, I feel like that would have been perceived better. Because you would have established that Superman does not KO, and then give him a scenario in which he has to. Now, do I think that was still a good choice? No. I mean, even Henry Cavill pushed back on that scene. He's talked about how he didn't want to do the next snap.
Do you remember the scene where he's like he gets the drinks poured over his head and the guy walks out and his truck's like crumbled with a wood? I feel like that's not something Superman would do. It just seems kind of... It's just very...
It's just there's
really,
nothing...
It just doesn't seem like Superman.
There's nothing in the movie that screams to you as something that Superman would definitely do.
This is just like a morally grey Superman almost.
Yeah.
It's more like... It feels like an anti-hero Superman more than a superhero Superman.
But I think Henry Cavill was a good casting choice. I don't think he had great scripts.
He was just I mean, even Amy Adams was a good casting choice.
I agree.
They just gave her nothing to work with.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder is just too dark with his movies.
Well, even when they tried to do like Sass, right? When they had her try to do like the coach versus like business class, like I feel like they could have done something with that scene, and it just fell completely flat. Like it just didn't do anything.
And the Daily Planet just being like a regular words on a big building.
Well, not to mention there was no Clark.
Well, you have here's the thing, like the setting is much
That's
as
true.
the setting in any movie is as much of a character as the characters in the movie, right? When you look at specific like things like cities that are in like big franchises, most of the time you can distinguish them from one another because you see certain landmarks that are different, unless it's just NYC, because I mean there's a lot of movies that just take place in NYC, but even that, right, you can always tell when a movie is in NYC because you see specific landmarks, like you see the Empire
Like the
State
billboards.
Building, you see the Statue of Liberty and stuff like that, so there's still landmarks that you recognize. Oh, we're in NYC. Or even in London, when they do London, you know, you see like the bridge, or you see like Big Ben, and you see these things that tell you that it's London. When you look at Metropolis, there's nothing that tells you this is Metropolis.
This is just city with buildings. Generic city with buildings.
Yeah.
And that's what and to the identity, not of the city so much, but I was saying before you said that, Ruby, was Clark had no identity. He was barely Clark Kent. He was Superman with glasses on. Clark Kent is a different person.
There's also no reason to give him the glasses. I mean, yeah, I know the reason what they gave was to like reduce his like X-ray vision and stuff like that. But even that didn't really make sense now that he's an adult, because you would think that an adult would have more control over his powers regardless. They're treating him like Cyclops, who doesn't have control over his eyes when he like takes off his visor. But
Going back to the city part, if we're talking about someone, what do you call it? You know, the Batman 2023, like that Gotham design was so like great with the massive billboards and the you could tell that was a Gotham. I can't remember if Gotham was showed very much in the DCEU, but like from what I can maybe picture, I don't think it was. It was very generic as well.
It barely was there.
True. Did it show up in BVS? It did.
I think for like part of that one island was part of it, and they were there at the beginning of the movie where the cops were releasing those people in the basement, and it was the first appearance of Batman.
Was that the crate scene where they definitely broke a guy's neck?
No. It was the one with the two cops, and he had branded the
yes,
criminal.
I remember now. That was yeah.
I think that was Gotham.
I mean, it's the fact that you can't even definitively say it tells you.
Just the fact that we don't remember if that was Gotham or not. Just shows.
And I think it showed up for a brief period in Suicide Squad.
That's right, the bed shot. Yeah, and it did just feel like a city as well.
Honestly, if you look at the settings for all of them, the only one that actually had a distinct visual difference was Wonder Woman. You had Themyscira that was obviously... And even when they went to London, like you could still tell it was old London. It was not like a modern London.
And Shazam was shot in Philly.
Yeah.
I love Shazam. It was great.
And that's the thing, when a lot of these directors, and I don't think Zach necessarily does this, but a lot of these directors find specific locations to shoot these things so that it looks a specific way. And from what I know, Zach really only used, like, first of all, a couple of cities, so like Chicago and the usual choices that he used to film. So that's where you have like those cities all looking kind of the same. But also, like, I think he pretty much used sets, like, from the BVS that I've seen. I'm sorry, the BTS that I've seen. It's mainly been, like, green screens and, like, effects that were put.
But just from the trailers, you could see how different James... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Just from the trailers, you see how different Superman looks.
It's just so bright. I love how like actually colorful.
I mean,
the DCEU looks.
I will say this: I have not heard them say a single word, but Rachel and David have much more chemistry than Amy and Henry ever did.
Just that one scene. That one scene in the trailer.
They visually have chemistry without even having said a single word.
And the thing that, and I remember when I first Ben. I don't know if you were on the first live I went to at Ruby's, but I
don't
know
think I
what
was.
I know what my picture is, and I understand that. And people are like, "Oh boy, he's a Snyder guy," and I'm not. I don't get me wrong. I loved, like I said, the things I liked about the DCEU. I did like the things I didn't like. The thing that I don't like about Snyder fans, and I mean the hardcore Snyder fans, is with them you can't like new stuff
You
without
can't criticize Snyder
yeah
either, or they will.
without whether you can't criticize Snyder at all, and you can't like the new stuff and like the old stuff. There's, like I said, the things I liked, but I am so excited for something new. This
Oh, I
night,
can't wait.
DCEU is gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
I people who
And
won't
some
let
people
that
are saying,
go.
"Oh, it's gonna be so confusing for the general audience." No, I don't. It's not gonna be.
No, it's not at all.
People are
Rest in
like people
peace.
get
Rest in peace,
recasted all the
DCEU.
time.
Yeah.
People have like different. The people understand there's like multiple Batmans and multiple Supermans at this point.
Yeah.
I hope we get an Aquaman that actually looks like a comic Aquaman.
And people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, but they're keeping like old actors." Like, I don't think anyone's gonna care that Viola Davis is still Amanda Waller.
I'm glad Blue Beetle's coming back because that movie looked. I don't know how good it was, but I think the casting was really
It
good.
wasn't that bad. It was neat. It was a neat little movie.
Yeah, it was
It
good.
was
And people,
I'll be super
people
honest.
forget
I've
that
watched
that
like
movie was not even supposed to go out into theaters. It was supposed to be
Yeah.
a streaming movie.
I
I'll
want
be
to
honest,
see
And the
I
fact that
regret-
it did as well as it did for a streaming movie, I mean, no, it didn't make any money, but it still did kind of well.
Yeah.
Like, it was
And it
never
was-
gonna
I
make
watched
money
very-
regardless. So it's like one of
I
those
bought-
things where they might as well have tried to make more money from it.
And it was really a landmark to the movie because it was an all Latin cast, all Latin director, the Latin directors, all Latin cast. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
It was
129.2 million.
it was great
I think-
on how big of a budget.
Was the villain not just like generic
104.
corporation villain though? I'm pretty sure.
So
think
it
that's the
didn't,
real
it didn't
issue with
break
the movie.
even because it's 104 million, but like it's still, I mean, technically it made
Respectable.
more than the budget, even if
Yeah.
it didn't really technically profit.
Yeah.
That's more than what most of the movies did, anyways.
Exactly.
Most of the movies didn't even make the budget back.
Yeah.
Blue
Um,
Beetle is what we're talking about. Right
it-
then.
It was the villain was pretty generic. It wasn't terrible though. It was
Was it not like a direct copy of the suit as well? Just like a similar.
pretty much.
I mean,
Yeah,
look,
that's-
you look at the Rotten Tomatoes for it, it had a 90% audience score, which is higher than all of the other audience scores that we've looked at. And it even got certified. Like, that doesn't
It's definitely worth a
happen.
watch,
Like,
then.
it is actually the only movie that got both certified fresh and also, like, verified. Like hot, whatever the fuck it's called.
I do hope Blue Beetle shows up in the DCU like Teen Titans. I really hope he's like a core member.
I just pray that Donna Troy is there. Please, she's supposed to be the
Oh my
leader of the
God.
team.
Bro, I'm hoping for a good depiction of her Robin.
Please,
In live
I
action.
need Donna Troy to be there. She's supposed to
I
be
just
the leader
need-
of the Teen Titans, and she has not
I just
been
need
able
Teen
to be there.
Titans.
I
don't
would
care
love
who's in the Teen
I would love a
Titans.
Titans movie. My favorite character. I've been a Superman.
But
fanatic since I
rewriting
was a kid.
history, man. The trinity of the Teen Titans is supposed to be Donna, Starfire, and Nightwing, and Donna is rarely there.
I want a good Dick Grayson so bad because he's my second favorite
Bro.
character.
I need a good Donna Troy.
What? Let's do it both. Let's have it both.
I
What do you
mean,
call it?
Titans was okay, but she still wasn't really the leader.
They tried to make it low edgelordy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy edgy. They made Raven. They made Raven like
Oh god.
what's her name? Rebellious girl.
Yeah.
I
instead of
still don't know
Mystic
why they
Arts
debuted
Master.
Starfire like that with their freaking Party City wig. Like you could have made Anna look so beautiful, and they did that with the season 2. But
Yeah.
why did they give her the freaking Party City wig?
I don't want to sound like bad here, but I hope we get like a lighter skinned Starfire compared to like
I don't think. I mean,
like that's
I don't
you know
think.
what I mean?
I don't
You
think
do.
the skin tone really matters at the end of the day. It's
not really.
the
I think she needs orange hair instead of red hair, or like sorry, what am I saying? Purple hair. I mean purple hair. Like no, sort of like Starfire from the show, Teen Titans show.
No, because I mean, 2003 is inaccurate to what Starfire is supposed to actually look like. I feel like they should
I
pull
feel like she's
from
just
the
my
New Teen
main.
Titans, like the Marvel Wolfman.
Mm.
Like, I feel like they should just use those designs. I think James probably will, because I think he's a more of an old school guy. So I think he probably will want to use, like, the new Teen Titans designs.
I want to see a green Beast Boy as well instead of white Beast Boy.
They might modify the Starfire suit, because that might
can
not
change into more than one animal
in the modern era.
Wait, what did what's his name? What did Beast Boy actually turn into in the Titan show? Because I never really
A
watched
tiger.
past episode 2. Is that it? Seriously?
Did he ever change anything else?
I don't know. I think they just made him a tiger.
Yeah, I kept going like, okay, he's a tiger.
I like the Young
Green
Justice
Tiger.
version where he turned into that Martian race.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like they could
I think we need
use-
more creative
Yeah,
Beast
they
Boy
need-
like animals because there are so many animals you can
whoever
turn into.
does Green Lantern needs to make these people a little bit more creative with their like. I understand it's an effects thing, but they can be a little bit more creative. Like I know
What
how.
do we feel?
I mean, I know
what do we
how
feel about the casting?
canonically is kind of boring in his like contraptions and everything, but it's like you don't have to make him boring. Like,
Casting for
you can make him a
lanterns.
little creative.
What do we feel about the casting of what's his name, Jon Stewart? Like I think he looks really
I
good, but
wish
there's
they
all
had gone for a darker skinned man, but
yeah. I think he fits like the
I think that
facial
they-
structure and the looks for him, but dark skin would have worked better. I think in terms of
the
representation.
problem. I think they resolved this issue sort of because at the very least they did make sure that they surrounded him with POC actors, like with his parents and everything. At least they didn't do the thing where they do like one white parent and one POC parent. So at least they are like not doing that. I think that kind of I think they understood what they did with Aaron Pierre being Jon Stewart. So they were like, okay, we got to make sure that these other actors are POC.
I kind of feel bad for Aaron Pierre for that because he's just going out for the role,
Yeah.
you know, and
I
automatically
mean, the
people are like,
runner-up
"You're not good
was
enough."
a better match.
I think he
for
will do
Jon,
great.
but I can understand.
Oh, I think he will too.
If he just performed better, you know. I also think that a little bit part of the problem is the freaking fan cast because I think James Gunn's listening too much to the fan cast a little bit. I mean, it's nice that they give him a chance to audition, but like, I really hope certain fan casts don't become a thing. because
Please just
they
don't
are
make Timothy Chalamet anything. Just don't put Timothy Chalamet at all.
Well, he is in pretty big with WB, so that's the problem.
Oh, that is. I just don't want him to be. I don't want him to be Nightwing. Like I know
there's
people always
other
call
roles
Nightwing
that
like a
Timothy
twink.
Could play.
People always call Nightwing a twink, and what's his name? Timothy
Yeah.
Chalamet is pretty twinky, so that's what everyone's told about. But he's too skinny, I think, to be Nightwing. Nightwing needs to be more like athletically built.
I may be the only person on the planet, or at least comic book fan, who I really could care less that they're having Jason Momoa as Lobo. I've never liked Lobo as a character, and I think he fits.
I think it's perfect casting. He looks.
I think
just
it's great casting. I just don't care about Lobo. I've never liked
I
Lobo.
don't know I don't know a lot of much because I'll be honest. I've not like touched many comics at all.
He is the '90s personified. Lobo is the '90s. That's exactly
yeah,
what Lobo is.
yeah, that's pretty. He's like the biker gang dude, you know. He's.
Yeah.
I think he's a cool concept. I like how he's just like immortal because he killed all his race. But
He is basically like the biker dude stereotype. That's what he is.
it is cool though. I think he is a cool design.
I think the way that they should do Lobo is kind of the way that they should do Deadpool, where it's like he's there occasionally.
Yeah, like a casual.
Although
almost sideburn sort of
unfortunately,
thing.
I feel like they're probably not going to do the Deadpool. I think Deadpool's going to be a main occurrence, which is
He's too popular right now. That's the issue. Like I like Deadpool. I just think he's a
Small
little
doses.
too.
Well, they're
Yeah,
not
it
even
is.
gonna let him curse. He's probably not gonna even be allowed to curse.
I hope he will be able to. And there's a. Oh, do you see? There's a. Ryan Reynolds wants to make another Deadpool movie.
Oh, I'm sure he does, because he's right now dealing with an enormous scandal on his end. So
Seriously?
well, yeah.
What's he?
Oh, do you not keep up with like the Blake Lively stuff?
I
Maybe
didn't know
not.
about that either.
He's in a little bit of a hot water. Let's
Wait,
just
what
put
did
it
he
that
do?
way.
Like, describe it.
I'm
Describe it
not
like
gonna
the.
describe it out here, not in the podcast episode, but I'll be glad to.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's not
So,
hard to find.
I've never been too interested in DC, and that's mainly because of the movies. I think, like, I'm a big like action figure collector, and I don't know if you know about like McFarlane Toys and just their
Mhm.
Mhm.
like awful figures. Well, not awful. They're just
Well, now
more
Mattel
statues than
has the rights
figures.
back, so we're gonna get
That's
Mattel
true. I'm
figures.
excited for that.
You know what McFarlane's better than his figures? The statues he did. Like,
Yes, the
To be
Marvel
those are
fair,
good.
when I first heard McFarlane Toys, I thought it was Seth MacFarlane. I didn't realize it was Todd.
I one time I was in a Forbidden Planet.
I'm like, why is the guy from Family Guy making toys?
I was in a Forbidden Planet one time, and I saw McFarlane Toys Lex Luthor in the power armor. I was like, "Oh, this looks really nice." And he was on clearance. He was like £13, and I think McFarlane's are like 25. So I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I might buy this." And I didn't buy him, but then I remembered people talking about how McFarlane just wasn't very good.
they just some of them are okay, some of them aren't.
Yeah, I've
They
heard.
just went up in price here because of the tariffs.
That's right.
Mhm.
The deluxe action, the deluxe Jim, Jesus, sorry, Superman,
Jim
the
Lee?
new Superman figure.
Oh yeah. I
James
saw
Gunn.
that.
It's $40
Ooh.
for an action figure. I was
I
like,
think
nope.
Man,
I'm
what
just
happened to
mad.
like the $9.99 multi-pack
Exactly.
action figures, man? I collected all of
We
them.
used to press their feet, they punched.
Can we go back to that? Like, they don't have
I'm
to be
just mad.
fancy. They can just be simple toys, man. I'll buy
I'm just
a
mad
Happy
that
Meal toy at this point.
I'm just not the best. Like DC action figures you can get at the moment are all imports that are like over $80 or
I
£80.
feel like they just need to remember to make cheap toys again. Just like they don't all have to be $50.
I just want a Marvel Legends like style DC figures because like
Give me
I enjoy Marvel Legends.
like like little guys. Like give me little guys. Like do a
Like the little
multi-pack.
sachets. Like
Look up, Ben. Look up. I think it's MayFX.
Mayfex. I love the Mayfex figures. I need to get that Hush Batman.
No, it is the Hush Superman
It
is
looks
incredible
so-
too.
Oh my god! Oh, I actually don't really want the Hush Superman. I want like a bulkier. You know the Dark Knight Returns Superman.
Oh, okay. See, I don't like them that bulky. I like the little more
I
trim.
don't know. That's true, but I prefer the bulkiness. But I'd really love that Hush Batman or the Nightfall one, but it's really expensive recently.
Yeah, they're good though. They're really good.
So
Mayfex
question,
are,
wait,
like,
question.
top brand.
So
Yeah.
if the movies that are announced release, what would you or the end shows, what would be the thing that you're most looking forward to if they end up releasing? Assuming that they release.
Are you talking about characters or just like?
Just like the DCU films and shows that have been kind of confirmed to be releasing.
I'm hoping for like a really cool Batman that isn't like completely serious and that can be a bit campy. You know, like the what's it called again? Batman Brave and Bold.
Hmm.
I'd love a funny-ish Batman that is like a serious funny Batman. You know.
I'm excited for Superman, of course. I mean, beyond the moon excited.
I'm a little bit
100%.
nervous, but I think
Besides
it'll do
that,
well.
I'm excited for a dynamic duo. The Robin and Jason Todd.
I'm eager to see what they do with My Adventures with Green Lantern because I feel like it's something that could do really well, and I
That's
like
just
the
the
My
truth, right?
Adventures universe, so I think it would be nice to see something kind of unfold with that. And I think in general, like other than that, I'm hoping Paradise Lost actually ends up happening because
Yeah.
I really need Wonder Woman content. We're starving over here.
I'm hoping they do an Injustice 3. I really love the Injustice
Yeah,
games.
I almost wish that they do something that's not Injustice, but it's still like that Injustice type game. Like, just do a different story.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
I'd be
mad at
fine with-
Injustice for normalizing like an evil Superman type trope.
Like, the game itself is fine. It's just the story that's not.
I read the comics before I played the game, And I thought it was, I mean, as much as I love Superman, I thought it was really interesting. Like, what if he just goes off? Like, what would...
Didn't he just...
Yeah,
didn't he
I
go
think the
too long in
problem
that?
with the comic book is that they dragged it on.
Oh, it did drag. Me, the
They kept,
idiot that I
they
am,
kept
I
renewing. Like, I feel like there was a point where it was set up to end, and you can kind of tell when that point is, and then they just continued it.
And I bought all
You know what? I
all
just
five
remembered
graphic novels of it.
about...
And
I
I'm
just
sure
remember
Tom
we were
Terra's
talking
like,
about
God
Injustice.
damn, why do they keep like renewing this? Like, I keep trying to end this thing, and they keep renewing more.
Your Injustice talk just made me remember about Plastic Man. I'd love to see a Plastic Man in the DCU.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Ben Schwartz, I think Ben Schwartz could be cool as Plastic Man because he's, you know how he's playing Shapesmith, and I just think he has like the voice for Plastic Man, of like a corny-ish, funny style voice.
A character that I hope that they introduce would be Big Barter. I think you could do it really easily. Because what would be interesting, and I've said this before, what would be interesting is if they introduce Apocalypse before they introduce Darkseid. So you're kind of like on Apocalypse, you know you're on Apocalypse, and you can kind of like hear like whispers of his name, but you don't really ever see him. You feel his presence without him actually being there. So you could have like
Granny
a show
Goodness
where
would be
like
pretty
you
funny.
have Granny Goodness raising like the Furies, and you have Big Barda, and you have the Big Barda escape and have her, you know, rescue Scott the way that she does in the comics. And then you just feel that presence of Darkseid, but he's never actually there. I feel like that would be very powerful to do, and it would make people interested in this idea of not having him do like the Thanos thing where he's like on a toilet every single like movie or something like that, but like just having his presence be felt. And I think the same thing goes with Batman. Like, just have his presence be felt even when he's
Aura
like
farming.
not on the screen.
Just aura farmers.
Like,
But-
the thing about it is that we're such nerds that they could name drop anything and we will like run with it. Like,
No,
if they
absolutely.
name
Yes.
imagine they like, I don't know, name drop like John Corbin. Like, it's like there's certain names that they could just
Did you hear what he
name.
said?
Did it say John
Who?
Corrigan the Spectre?
Oh my god! Do you know what that means?
The funniest thing though could be like if someone like name drops something and it's meant to be more of like a joke, but we take it more seriously.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Peacemaker, he just like says like something random in like season 2. Like, he says, I don't know, freaking Olmac.
Wait, season
or
2
something
came out,
like...
didn't it?
No, it's not out yet.
Has?
No,
Oh,
it's
has
not
it
out
not?
yet. No.
Ah.
It's gonna release after Superman.
Ah.
But it is the next thing that's gonna release, but after Superman, like I think August maybe. I don't even know. We haven't even seen the trailer for it, but I assume that the trailer's... Well, we've seen the Max...
There were snippets in
there was that Max, like, spotlight thing.
Yeah.
But I think likely Peacemaker's probably going to be in front of Superman, which would make sense. Probably see something in front of Superman.
I want to see a lot of Robins, like
So
good representation.
one of the freaking aspects of the DCU is the fact that they had a comic accurate suit, and then they said it was Dick Grayson's suit.
Yeah.
True.
I'm like, how do you do something well and then butcher it by opening your mouth?
Are we talking about the
So
gotcha
yeah,
you
so
said?
that one we assume that it's Jason's suit, right? But actually, in
It
a
definitely
panel,
looked like one.
Zack Snyder confirmed that it was Dick Grayson.
And that's the other thing. You're gonna just tease that and then not give you a backstory. And it's
But it's like,
oh, yeah, that's
at that
fair.
point, he's just like throwing things. I don't even think Zack Snyder has actually read a comic book. Like,
I don't really think he cares anymore either.
And here's this is the other thing I argue with Snyder fans about all the time. Zack Snyder released storyboards for what he wanted to do for Justice League 2 and 3. Have you heard the stories that he
I've
wanted
heard
to do with that?
everything to do with Snyder.
And
I
I'm
think
Robin's.
the thing is,
I'm
well,
like,
I understand people are gonna
whoa.
say, "Oh, well, you know, it was just an idea. You know, he didn't actually do it, so it doesn't really count."
No.
Well, it's like you can
No,
have
it counts.
you can still have a shit idea.
Yeah, exactly. And they were shit ideas. Oh, I'm
And
gonna
it's
have
one of those
Batman
things where there's
impregnate Lois.
a difference between just brainstorming and then just like use the shit out of the wall.
What if we have Bruce impregnate Lois while Clark's gone? What?
I want to
then they'll
see. I
raise.
want to see a bit of a flirty Bruce, though, like a actual good Bruce Wayne, similar to not like completely similar to Christian Bale, but like an actual like Bruce Wayne.
I liked Ben Affleck. He was one of the things that I liked
Yeah, he
about
was.
the DCEU.
I
Give
think
me
Affleck's
Jonathan
Batman's
Bailey
good.
or Ethan Peck as Batman, please. Do not do.
Do not do Jensen Ackles.
No Jensen
or
Ackles.
Not
No
just an
Jensen
Ackles,
Ackles.
but it's not Alan Richardson either. Like freaking.
Alan. He was
Goddamn.
he. Alan Richardson is Reacher, isn't he?
Just have him. Just have Alan be freaking like Captain Atom or something. Don't have him be
That
Batman.
would be that would actually really good.
That would be really good, to be honest.
Don't have him. Don't have him be Batman. He's not gonna be.
I
want
want to see. I want to see Ben Affleck come back. Maybe imagine Ben Affleck as like Wildcat though. Would that not be a
That'd be cool.
better move?
See, I
That
just
would be
don't
a
think
cool
they're gonna
casting.
do that because there's gonna be fans or everything.
Yeah.
They're just like.
That would be kind of cool though because of the whole like Wildcat
I mean,
being in
I could see a
Batman's.
world in which Henry technically comes back into a role. I just don't know if they're going to be willing
Mm.
to do that. I think you have to have Superman guaranteed do well for that to even
Yeah.
be a question in.
I'm just going randomly here, but imagine Henry Cavill as Orion.
I don't think
I
that
I
would work.
I'm completely spitball. I
I
don't
don't
know
think that
anything
would
about
work.
Orion.
No, I don't think that works.
I do want to see though the New Gods in there though, like Mr.
Just
Miracle.
have Henry be High Father. Just have him because you
I
had
should
him
just cast
be,
him.
you had him be like the Wolverine. I just have him have those like.
Should just
fun
cast him as
stuff.
Nightwing at this point. Cast him as Nightwing.
Make him Darkseid.
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh my god.
I need a blue suit Darkseid though instead of boring gray.
If I could go to Warner Brothers and say, I want you to make one project for me, and this is going to sound so stupid, but this is the one I would pick. First of all, I love DC animation. I thought it's been like, even on their bad stuff, it's been solid. Like I love their animation studio. My favorite storyline is Kingdom Come. If they could do a Kingdom Come animation in the style of Alex Ross, I wouldn't ask for another thing ever again.
I'd love for just like a random one-off like Plastic Man like comedy series, just like a couple episodes where he's just doing like random stuff.
That would be great.
That'd be funny because like it would work really well for a character like Nightwing. Not
Yeah.
Nightwing, sorry, Plastic Man. Because I don't think he's popular enough to have his own movie. Like he's pretty popular, but I don't think he would even
I think he'd be
need a
better for
movie.
a
Well, I
TV
think the
series.
solution is
Yeah.
for here's what I believe in, and I know people are gonna say, but it's supposed to be a cinematic universe. The thing is, like movies will only work with like big names, like either
I'm
a
thinking-
big actor or a big character. Like those are the only times where a movie will actually work. Most
thinking
of the
Plastic
most
Man.
of the projects for the DCU should be shows. Like it should be, because you're
Yeah.
gonna have a lot more fleshed out. You're gonna have characters like the Creature Commandos. Nobody cares about the Creature Commandos. They wouldn't have made well as a movie, but they were still good overall because they were in they're in the medium that fits them well. That's the thing. The character and the actors should all fit the mediums that they're in. Like Green Arrow should be a movie because at this point, like, first of all, we already had a Green Arrow show, so it wouldn't make sense to do another one. And second of all, like, he's one of those characters that can pull in that box office number if you do it right.
He's gone. I'm thinking the best way to do like I'm going back to Plastic Man here, like an I Am Groot style series where he's just like up to stuff. Maybe a little longer, like 15-minute episodes, but like just very short.
Yeah.
Just have him like established in there so he can show up in like random movies as well.
Yeah. And I think what they need to not do is like the cameo fest, but what they can do is like do Easter eggs. And I do
Yeah.
think that Easter eggs are different from cameos because Easter eggs actually serve some sort of world building purpose, whether it's
Like have what's his name? What's Blue Beetle? Like the Ted Cord.
Ted
Have
Cord?
Cord Industries in the background and
Yeah.
of like a Superman.
well, yeah,
plane.
like you should see like well-known brands like in the settings of like the movies, like Cord Industries or
A Wayne Tech building.
LexCorp or Luther Core, technically speaking, or like Daily Planet. You should see those kind of names float around. Like have the Gotham Gazette, have the
Have a Wayne Tech building in
Wayne Tech.
Metropolis.
I mean, Wayne in general should be present in pretty much every project because
Definitely.
you
He's
should be
definitely
able
like a
to
Tony
see
Stark
that little
type.
logo and be like, oh, that's Because overall, I mean, we know that he's like $1 trillion company because that's the way that he
Yeah.
funds everything. So he has to. It'd be kind of
Just
funny, like to see like just random, almost like a hidden Mickey, but it's like hidden Wayne logos.
just like casual and Easter eggs. Maybe I have like a random like
Just
character
have like
that's
a
kind of
big belly
noticeable in the
burger.
background.
Just have a big belly burger truck like just drive by with no explanations.
Or like I'm trying to think because I don't know an awful lot about DC because I'm more of a Marvel guy. But
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know many like characters you could just throw in the background that aren't like crazy noticeable, but if you know them, they're there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could even have like Ray Palmer show up because like he's obviously a very well-known scientist. So like even
When
having his
you
companies
Ray
and stuff.
Palmer's the Atom. I'm just trying to remember, isn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
yeah. A
And
lot
his
of
his
just like a
company
bunch
is
of
also like really well known as well. So
hmm,
it's one of those things that could appear before we even see the character. That's the thing. Like a lot of these things should be set up before we actually meet the character. Like we should hear
yeah.
about them before we are introduced to them. Like in Superman, we should kind of hear a little bit about Supergirl, even if she doesn't show up in the movie.
That's right, because she's getting her own movie, isn't she? Woman of
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow. When's that coming out? Like 2027 or so?
And think it's next year.
Really?
Because they're trying to do it like one movie a year, essentially, or at least or two movies a year.
That's good.
So,
We don't need DCU fatigue this early in.
well, I think it's good to have like it's good to have like a couple movies released every
Mhm.
year, and then most of it be shows. And it's the thing
That makes
is
so much sense.
the way that they're also doing it is where you don't have to watch anything. Like you don't have to watch one thing to get the other thing. And that's extremely important because I feel like that's why the MCU is failing is because they
With
set
Miss
themselves
Marvel,
up with the idea of you have to watch everything. And there's a lot to watch. Like it used to be like 20, 30 films, whatever. Now it's like 300 things that you have to like watch and keep up with to fully
there's a lot of
understand
stuff.
everything. And that's where
What
like people
haven't
are
I
like tuning
watched?
out because I don't think it's really hero fatigue. I think it's just the fatigue of having to do homework for everything.
Yeah, I don't think I've watched like many things. I want to watch the Thunderbolts now when it comes. Like it's already out, but
I'm
I
gonna
just
wait for it to
haven't.
come to streaming.
I might do that too, but I
I'm
do want to
just
watch
the
it.
only two movies that I'm gonna see in theaters. Hopefully at this point is Superman and Fantastic Four.
Oh, I can't wait for
I
both of them.
might see How to Train a Dragon. I'm not sure about it, but
I probably won't. I was never really a How to Train Your Dragon kind of fan, but I'd
uh,
love. What else? I'm trying to think.
I think I'm trying to be smart with my money as well. I'm already spending a lot on comic books anyways. I don't need to spend more
True.
on movies.
Oh, I'm awful with my money. I'm so like I'm getting paid like minimum wage as well, so I gotta keep it to a low.
Hmm.
But I'm actually just racking my brain to actually remember DC
Alright.
characters. Like I'm just pulling from like Justice League Unlimited because that's where you can get like everyone.
Yeah. I mean, even like having like shining armor, like you pop up,
Mm.
like have like a
What about
Stargirl moment.
what about Kamal Nanjiani? I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong as Mr. Gold. Did he not like drop out?
Wait, what?
The Mr. Gold casting, like what's I don't know I can't
I
remember
don't
how you
think
pronounce his
there's
name.
been a Booster Gold casting, not an official one.
Kamal Nanjiani, I swear. Wait. You're the guy who was in the Eternals played Kingo.
I don't
Hold
think
on.
that was an official announcement. I think that was probably a fan cast.
Really?
There's been no
I'm pretty
news
sure.
regarding Booster Gold, not in the
Oh,
DCU.
I could have swore I seen a like James Gunn mention and something about Kamal and Johnny or Harry.
Oh, I think that's probably a rumor, but it's not something that's ever been
Mm.
confirmed.
Ooh, as well as that, the superhero cafe. I'm excited for that to
There's a
actually
lot
show up
of fake
eventually.
rumors going around, like the fact that Sergeant Rock is allegedly canceled. It's actually not. It's just they're having location scheduling problems, so they're just looking for a different time period for where they actually start shooting. That's all that's happening with Sergeant
Who is
Rock.
Sergeant Rock?
Hmm?
Who is Sergeant Rock?
World War II. You saw him in Creature Commandos. That's
Oh,
the
is he the big giant armored guy that
he's
Doctor?
the Sergeant Rock is like the military guy. Like the when you go back, the Easy Company, like the like the World War II guys.
I haven't watched Creature Commandos. That's the issue.
Oh, well,
I just try to
He's a
like.
World War II soldier, so he fights in World War II.
Uh-huh.
So Sergeant Rock
Oh,
is
so will
yeah,
GI Robot show up in that show then?
potentially maybe. I'm not sure, but like probably. It's probably pretty. It's really gonna be like the Easy Company, which is like the World War II like soldiers for the DC universe, like the people who fought the the German army.
The Yahtzees.
Yeah, because the Easy Company is based on the E Company, which is the real historical figures, but the Easy Company is the fictional version of them, essentially. So you have like Sergeant Rock is the most well known one, but you also have a bunch of like other guys that kind of show up in that. They're not super well known because they're mainly just made during like World War II, because comic books were made during World War II.
A lot of propaganda stuff.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, so it was part of kind of that thing, kind of similar to the Blackhawks in a way, where the Blackhawks were also like a fictional well, not a fictional thing, but they were put into the DC universe, based around the actual militia of the Blackhawks. There's a lot of like historical based figures in the DC universe because of where it started.
yeah, they're really. How old is DC Comics? Like nearly like they started like 20s almost, didn't they? Or 30s.
1934.
Holy.
Because it was even before like Action Comics. They had like a few things even before Superman.
Yeah, Batman was there first, wasn't he? He was really old.
Batman was
Really?
afterwards, but they did other things that we don't really talk about because they don't necessarily age well. Not everything. This is kind of like the Detective Comics before Batman was introduced are don't age well.
Are they pretty racist?
Oh, they're extremely, because you have to remember it was during World War II, so there's a lot of anti-Japanese
Japanese, yeah.
and very racist depictions of them. like very racist. Like
I'm trying to think. There's definitely one that's coming to mind. What are they? I have zero. I've actually like so much less knowledge in DC than I actually thought I did.
Yeah, it just before they did like the superheroes thing, there was a lot of things that don't age well at all. Because I mean, it was all political propaganda. That's what it was at the end of the day. That's what comics were.
Yeah, but, of course. But I think they managed to. What's there like some recent superheroes that are propaganda, like turned. Like I know Superman, not
You
Superman.
mean like
Captain America was like
modern
one of them, but like
propaganda? I mean,
yeah, sort of like that.
I mean, I guess technically Captain Atom was because he's part of like the military and everything.
Uh,
You also have just in general the JSA. I mean, usually, at least in the original depiction, they were much more political as well, along with Green Arrow and Green Lantern as well, specifically Hal Jordan.
what did Green Arrow do?
Oh, Green Arrow is an open leftist. Like he's
Oh,
very political.
ah,
Like he is like probably one of the most politically open DC characters, other than the actual political figures, because like he always like speaks on specific things, especially leftist ideas, like pretty solidly too. I mean, I guess
it's like you're saying.
not now currently I mean, he's been kind of less political, but still, you still feel that presence anyways in his stories and everything.
So in like current times, he'd be like pro Palestine. Like I hate to bring politics into this, but I'm just trying to think of a.
I
I'm just.
I'm not sure where Green Arrow would stand, but I mean in general, probably yeah.
Mhm. That's actually I never knew that. I just thought he was
Because I
Batman
mean,
with
in
bow and
general,
arrow.
like when it comes to like Green Arrow and Wonder Woman specifically, like they are like feminist and leftist ideas. Like they just
Mhm.
are. They
Of
were
course,
created to be that idea. So I mean, in the modern sense, they would line up for the that same side, um, which is why people don't really like the Tom
Gal
King.
Gadot.
No, well, the Tom King
Oh,
Wonder Woman because he's making her pro-America, and right now leftists aren't very pro-America, so this kind of goes against Wonder Woman and what she would actually do. Um, but that's a whole different thing where that I've talked about
I've always
beforehand.
thought Green Arrow was like so cool, but I never realized like how political he was. I
Hmm.
just thought he was. I
If
just thought
you
he was
look at it,
Batman with bow
especially
and
his
arrow.
early ends, like you see it a lot. Like there's even moments where he clashed with specific other like DC characters over his political beliefs. Um, fun fact, not anymore. But Wally used to be conservative.
Wally, wait, Wally West.
Hmm. Like the
Ooh,
original Wally West. Yep. I don't think he is anymore, or at least he's not publicly. He doesn't publicly
he's
speak
just
up and
kind
say he
of
is anymore.
left. No, not
He's
left.
probably more
Sorry.
like apolitical, or you just don't want to talk
Yes,
about
centrist,
politics.
centrist.
Well, not even centrist. More so like he just doesn't talk about it.
Ah,
He don't want to discuss it because
no stance, no
like,
stance.
well, I should have to tell
It's
you who I
safer
voted
that
for.
way.
I was like, oh, I
It's
should
just
have to
safer that
tell
way, I think.
you. um, Icon as well is technically part of the Elephant Party. Um, I don't know if he would be anymore, but it canonically he is part of the Elephant Party. There's a lot of things where it's like there are characters where their political alignments are spelled out for political reasons. There was
That's
that
crazy.
one awkward era where Superman endorsed Ronald
Oh,
Reagan. Well, that's because
I think
the writer at the time was pro Reagan.
yeah, it really does depend on the writer on
Hmm.
what shows up.
I mean, canonically, Superman would be against Reagan because I mean,
Yeah,
you could just tell from
Superman's
his storylines.
he's just he's too good-willed. He's too good-willed to be like pro anything. He's pro peace. You know,
Pro peace
he
and
just
for
wants.
humanity overall.
Mhm. He just wants to do good.
Like he would be. I mean, essentially, Superman is anti-war, which
Mhm.
makes sense overall. Because even when there are wars, he usually doesn't openly take a side. He usually just tries to stop the war from even
Stop
occurring.
casualties and all that.
Hmm. Well, like even during that time, like there was points where he wanted to help like the Russian people, and the Americans didn't like that because obviously they were in a war with them. But
Mhm.
Superman did try to save like the Russian people as well as the American people, like during the Soviet Union and everything.
I
Um,
think that's why Injustice Superman's just so like disliked because he's nothing
yeah.
like how Superman should be.
Well, yeah, because Superman wouldn't be for a tyrannical.
Dictatorship.
Yeah, because like
Same as
even if he did end up like offing some people, like he still wouldn't be for like a total martial law because
I think he would
that's
be
just
fully
not what he
regretful of those
is.
actions as well. He just would like he would live in regret. Not live maybe, but he would
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, you could have had him be like kind of living in regret for offing Lois Lane, like always have that be
Oh,
kind
that's
of
right.
a point in his like turn. But I think the problem really is like even when you have like the Justice Lord's Superman who like essentially lobotomizes everybody, like that's another thing where it's like Superman wouldn't really do that because he believes
Yeah,
that
he wouldn't.
he even believes that robots have sentient life. Like he's even been someone who like lets like AI and stuff like have like a voice. So like he cares about life
The way he
overall.
like off Shazam though, like the way he off Shazam in one of them
Yeah,
instances, it was just like the worst depiction of
yeah.
Superman maybe
Because
ever.
he wouldn't even do
That
that.
is,
Like
it's so brutal. It's so brutal
and it's
for
one
him.
of those things where it's just for shock and awe and not for an actual
Yeah,
story point.
especially since Shazam's
Well,
a
even with
kid that,
Wonder Woman, the fact that she is someone who creates this regime, like
yeah, she's on the
Wonder
side of
Woman's
Superman.
villains
She
are
definitely,
literally like Ares and like people that are tyrannical. Like she's literally fought against people who stand for tyranny. So like it wouldn't make sense for her to be pro regime like that.
yeah, super out of character for her.
Yeah. And even like you have moments in the comic books where she like snaps the neck of Huntress. Well, not snaps the neck, but she uses her lasso and essentially chokes her out.
Mhm.
Um, so again, you have like even if she was trying to like make like the villains better, like she wouldn't turn on her friends like that because she cares about her friends. Like even the people that she isn't closest to, she still cares about to a degree. Um,
Yeah,
and especially when you have like the Huntress, like she's been like hanging out with the Birds of Prey occasionally and Justice League Dark and everything. So it's not like they haven't ever interacted. And you also have like in that scene you have characters around Huntress that she does care about, like at least in the mainstream comic book. So it's like again, you have you could maybe argue, okay, maybe Diana would have proposed this like new era, but she still would have been against like turning it on her friends. Like
and the like, what do you call it? Like slaughters. I feel
yeah.
like of opposition. She
Yeah,
wouldn't
because
be
it's
on that
like
side.
the essentially they're silencing the opposite thought, right? They're
Mhm.
against anyone who thinks that Superman is doing something wrong, which
That
like
just oppress
she
anyone that,
wouldn't be for the censorship of those opinions. Like she would hear them out and kind of give her own opinion on how things are.
in general, injustice is just like really out of character for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I mean in
The same as how
general, like Wonder Woman in general should be more of a diplomatic role overall, not so much a dictator.
it's the same as how in like Civil War comics, like a lot of characters are just like flipped around to not really be how they actually are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that in general, I'm not opposed to like Elseworld stories because they can be interesting, but I think
Yeah.
when you change so much of the character where they're like not recognizable, you have a problem because that's not really what
That's why
Elseworlds is supposed to be. Because like
I really like
Kingdom
the
Come is good, but like the point isn't that Superman is evil in Kingdom Come. The point is that he's old and weaker, and there's circumstances that are making him more rough on the edges. But Superman in Kingdom Come is still Superman. Like he still has those beliefs. They didn't like completely destroy his moral aspect. It's more so that he's approaching life a little bit more differently. He's not an evil Superman when it comes to Kingdom Come. He's just
yeah.
grittier, I suppose, older.
That's why I really like the Absolute Universe right now because
Yeah.
it just I don't
Yeah,
know
I
why
mean
people
they
hate it
still
because
have the aspects of the characters there. They're just in a different scenario, and they're
yeah,
still essentially the same person. There's a little bit different in the background that they grew up with.
yeah, how Batman isn't rich and Superman is what is actually Superman
Superman
like?
grew up on, so he had the opportunity to grow up on Krypton. That's
That's
what it
right.
is.
And it
Because
was a dictatorship.
essentially, Krypton didn't explode when Jor-El thought it would. It exploded later in life.
Mhm. And then
And then Wonder
yeah, so
Woman grew
he's
up
like,
in hell.
oh, oh yeah,
It's
because she does
literally
have that demon
it's basically
horse.
the Odyssey. I highly recommend checking it out because it's really good. If you like the Odyssey, if you like Greek myths, you like Absolute Wonder Woman.
Mhm. I really want to like get a bunch of Absolute comics and like maybe be my
Mm-hmm.
first couple of comics I read
Well,
since it's only the start
the
of a new
trades are
universe.
coming out um, when is it? I pre-ordered. The trade is already available for pre-order, the first volume. But let me actually double check when the drop is.
Oh, Absolute Martian Manhunter looks so cool as well. I think I love the what do you call it? The abs.
So August 12th is the drop for the first volume for Absolute Wonder Woman. You can pre-order it now. Like it's actually fairly priced. Like fair enough.
Is that like the full like? How many comics
It's
are out
the
of the Absolute?
7, I think. I think it includes the 7 issues. It could possibly include more because I'm not sure what the cutting off point is for. Let me just double check. I wonder if it
Yo, I might
says.
have to go in like a couple minutes.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm probably gonna end it soon, anyways. But let me just double check if it says the
No
number of
worries.
issues. Yeah, so it's so the first volume is gonna be 1 to 7.
Shit, I never realized how many of the Absolute already came out.
Mm-hmm. They're
Wait,
doing it like
Absolute.
once a month for Absolute Warner because right now they're focusing on the art of it, so they're giving the artist time, which is good because you don't want rushed art, especially right now.
What's it called? Absolute Martian Manhunter is the first issue not out. I saw a lot of edits of like the
Yeah,
panels.
the first 2 issues are out for Absolute Martian Manhunter.
That's really cool. I actually,
The second issue just dropped, I think this week actually, or something like
ooh,
that, or maybe last week. I forget.
I love the concept. I didn't see much about him. I just saw like the design at the start, but I looked into it and the concept for it looks so cool.
Mhm. Oh no, it was
Like
last week. Yeah, it was last week. Because this week was the question, and that was pretty much it.
question,
The question
as in,
all along the Watchtower. So it's Renee Montoya, and it finished up the story arc that it was doing. I'm really hoping that we
ah,
see Batwoman come back because
wait, Renee
we really
Montoya.
need a Batwoman ongoing, man.
Who is Renee Montoya? I hate to ask these questions constantly, but like,
She is a lesbian cop in the GCPD, and she is most known for being the main
ah,
question at this point, because Vic hasn't been the question in a long time. That's the one that you're probably used to. But the question has been Renee since a long time, actually. I don't even remember when it was first introduced. Renee was initially introduced as in the BTAS, and she's a character that grew popular outside of BTAS.
was she Batwoman or am I thinking, is that Kate Kane? I'm pretty sure that was Batwoman's name.
No,
My,
Batwoman is Kate Kane, yeah. Renee
yeah, that's
Montoya
right.
is just. She was in Batman the Animated Series. She's the female cop that you see all the time for the GCPD. That was
Then
her first
actually,
appearance. Her first appearance was Batman the Animated Series.
I consume such little DC media. This live's made me realize that I watched maybe like 4 movies of the DC. That's just because I think the DCU is it's just awful, to be honest. Like,
Was it really only in 2019 when she? Oh wait, no. Yeah, I guess I'm.
but I think the question, like the
Oh,
guy with
okay.
a
So, okay, no, this is wrong. Okay, so like 2006 is when Renee was initially introduced as the question.
the question's like the guy with the hat and the
Yeah,
blue
like
suit.
he's the
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
faceless mask.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm thinking the right character. There's a female
he's
question
originally
on
a
there. That's cool.
charlatan character, which is why you don't really see Vic anymore. You see other versions of the question because the charlatan characters are all people that kind of got shifted around because of rights issues. There's also why you no longer see the original version of Blue Beetle. You see Ted Kord, who's not the charlatan version of Blue Beetle.
Oh yeah, we're seeing like what's his name? I actually don't remember his name now.
I don't remember who the original one is, but it no,
Oh wait, the original wasn't Ted Kord.
no. The
Seriously?
original was somebody else. So the charlatan comics are what created a lot of these characters, and then they had the original versions of the characters, but then When DC took the rights of the Charlatan comics, they had to change specific characters because they didn't have the rights to use them. So they essentially reintroduced the characters as other like people like Ted Kord and like whatever else afterwards. It's whenever there's like a character change or like someone takes the new mantle, especially in like the older times, it was usually because of some sort of copyright or legal reasons they had to do it. Because it's more so like they have like the trademark, but they don't have the right to that specific character, so they just make a new character and have them be
Switch it up.
the trademark. Because it's like
does seem a bit
if
more
they buy,
popular.
for example, if they buy like the Blue Beetle trademark, right? They only own the actual trademark. They don't own like whoever was Blue Beetle before that. So they would essentially have to make a new Blue Beetle
and a new costume, or
huh?
Wait, do they have to redesign a costume, or can they just stick a new guy in there?
It's preferred. They generally just do, so it looks visually different and stuff like that. Because they only really own the rights to the name, not necessarily the entire character. That's why now you have like the scarab and everything. So you have a lot of things that are very different from the original concepts. Even the Ted Kord's version is different from the original Blue Beetle. So it's like you have these changes happen usually for legal reasons because legally they kind of have to change it because it's depending on the rights that they actually own.
I honestly prefer the newer, younger Blue Beetle prefer to Ted Kord, but that might be just because of like recency bias in terms of
I mean he's been
I'm
the
a
main
younger
one
guy.
for a while as well, and then
What's his name again?
Jaime. You mean
Yeah. Jaime Ramirez? I feel like I'm getting a little I hmm.
Wait, sorry, what'd you say?
What's his last name?
Oh, Reyes. Jaime Reyes.
Oh, Reyes. I was
Yeah.
close. I was close. I think Jaime Reyes. I just really like the design of the costume compared to Ted Kord is just spandex. Especially like I love that scene in the Blue Beetle movie where he pulls up the Final Fantasy sword as well.
Yeah.
It's just like
Actually, I think I am gonna end the live because
yeah, I'm gonna go as well anyway. I was getting called by a friend there.
See ya.
All right.
Okay, so that was good. For those of you who may have missed it, it's gonna be on my YouTube. I'm starting to upload my lives to YouTube now. So go over there if you missed the stream and are interested in hearing on what I said about the topic. Otherwise, I'll see y'all next time when we come back for another live podcast episode.